For decades, the world believed it knew Michael Jackson. Yet hidden within his own biology was a truth so profound, so unexpected, that even those closest to him never fully understood it. What scientists eventually uncovered was more than a medical diagnosis set, was a story written into his DNA itself. Michael Jackson was born on August 29, 1958, in Gary, Indiana. He was the seventh of 9 children born to Joseph and Catherine Jackson. From the very beginning, the spotlight followed him. By the age of 5, he was already performing on stage with his brothers. By 10, he had secured a record deal. By 13, he had achieved a #1 hit. The world never gave Michael Jackson the chance to experience a normal childhood, nor did it allow him the privacy to remain a mystery. Everything about him was expected to be known, analyzed, and consumed by a public that treated his life like an open book written solely for their entertainment. Every performance, every album, and every public appearance was scrutinized with an intensity few people could ever imagine. But there were things happening inside Michael Jackson that no audience could see, things written not in tabloid headlines or song lyrics, but in the microscopic language of biology itself. His DNA carried stories about who he was, where he came from, and what his body was enduring every single day of his life. Stories the world either refused to believe or simply lacked the scientific understanding to comprehend. As it turns out, those stories were far more extraordinary than anything the tabloids ever invented. To understand what science has revealed about Michael Jackson, we must return to a moment that changed everything, not a concert, a record release, or a performance, but a television interview that left millions of Americans stunned. It was 1993. Michael Jackson sat down with Oprah Winfrey for what would become one of the most watched television interviews in history. The public expected gossip. They expected controversy. Instead, they witnessed a man calmly sharing a simple medical truth. He had vitiligo. That was the explanation behind the dramatic changes in his skin tone. Yet for years, many people chose not to believe him. It was easier to accuse him of rejecting his identity than to accept the reality that he was living with a chronic medical condition. Vitiligo is an autoimmune disease. Understanding this fact changes everything about how we view Michael Jackson's experience. In autoimmune disorders, the body's immune system, designed to protect us from illness and infection, mistakenly attacks its own healthy cells. In the case of vitiligo, the immune system targets melanocytes, the cells responsible for producing melanin, the pigment that gives skin its color. In the body, as these cells are destroyed, affected areas lose their pigmentation, creating patches of lighter skin. The condition is unpredictable. The patches can vary in shape and size, and the disease may spread rapidly or remain stable for years. There is no way to negotiate with vitiligo. It follows its own biological course, regardless of a person's wishes. For someone with darker skin, the contrast can be striking. For someone performing under bright stage lights before millions of people, it can be especially challenging. And for a global superstar whose appearance was already under constant scrutiny, it became the subject of relentless speculation and misunderstanding. Dr. Arnold Klein, Michael Jackson's dermatologist, first observed signs of depigmentation around 1983, during the period when Thriller was dominating the music world. In 1986, a skin biopsy officially confirmed the diagnosis. The biopsy revealed 2 separate conditions. The second was discoid lupus erythematosus, a form of cutaneous lupus that can affect skin pigmentation, texture, and sensitivity. Like vitiligo, it is also an autoimmune disorder. This meant that Michael Jackson was not dealing with just one condition affecting his skin. He was managing 2 separate autoimmune diseases simultaneously, both of which directly impacted the very aspect of his appearance that became the focus of public criticism. These diagnoses were medically confirmed in 1986, years before the public seriously considered the possibility that his changing appearance might have a legitimate medical explanation. Scientific research has shown that vitiligo does not progress at a predictable rate. According to medical experts, the condition often advances in cycles, with periods of rapid pigment loss followed by long intervals of stability. For some individuals, vitiligo remains limited to small patches on the hands, face, or other areas of the body. For others, particularly those with extensive forms of the disease, depigmentation can spread across large portions of the skin. Michael Jackson belonged to the latter group. Over time, the condition affected an increasing percentage of his body, forcing him to make difficult decisions about treatment, appearance, and public perception, all while living under the most intense spotlight in the world. By the time Michael Jackson's autopsy was conducted in 2009, the Los Angeles County Coroner's report formally documented what his physicians had been saying for decades. "Vi sevdesedid 19 center 20,000, the compia menor with sumpla clarities enter. And sumpla center to the compia menorities enter 29. By the time Michael Jackson's autopsy betes enter to the compia minises menor, the compia menor menor. The humple is entered to a Michael Jackson's about these. By the time the report noted focal depigmentation across multiple areas of his body. It was part of the official medical record. It was documented. It was the truth that had always been available to anyone willing to examine the facts rather than the headlines. But facts rarely attracted the same attention as rumors. As a result, the diagnosis that should have settled the debate became, for many, just another reason for skepticism. Some insisted he was lying. Others claimed it was merely a cover story. Many found it difficult to believe that a person could undergo such dramatic physical changes without choosing them. The reality, however, was far less sensational than the theories surrounding it. The period Junslo, the period Junson Wantamuzit, the period Junsimo, Defria Choundo, the period Junsimo, the period Junsimo's in light, the period Junsimo, 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 the part and the severlite, the condition affected, medical science offers no known procedure capable of safely and evenly lighting an entire person's skin without causing severe and obvious damage. What did exist, and what Michael Jackson reportedly used under medical supervision, was a prescription treatment called monobenzone, commonly marketed under the brand name Benoquin. Monobenzone is a topical medication approved for patients with extensive vitiligo. Its purpose is not cosmetic enhancement, but medical depigmentation. When vitiligo has already affected the majority of a person's skin, doctors may recommend removing the remaining patches of pigment to create a more uniform appearance. The reasoning is both medical and practical. Severe vitiligo can result in uneven sun sensitivity and other skin-related complications. In Michael Jackson's case, the visible contrast in his skin also became a constant source of public scrutiny and media speculation. When administered under the guidance of a physician, depigmentation therapy helps reduce these contrasts by treating the remaining pigmented areas. It is a recognized medical treatment for advanced vitiligo, not the cosmetic transformation often portrayed by tabloids. Michael Jackson was not attempting to become someone else. He was managing a chronic autoimmune disease that was altering his body in ways he neither chose nor could control. Yet the world often preferred a more dramatic explanation. While public attention remained fixed on the surface of his skin, another fascinating story was quietly emerging, one that had nothing to do with appearance and everything to do with ancestry. Genetic genealogy researchers began uncovering details about the Jackson family's origins, tracing their lineage through generations marked by slavery, survival, and migration. In doing so, they challenged a long-held family belief that had been accepted for more than a century. For generations, the Jackson family had shared a story about one of their ancestors, a man known as Jawai Jack Gale. According to family tradition, Gale's father was Native American. The story had been passed down through generations and became part of the family's identity. Like many oral histories, it carried deep emotional significance. It provided a sense of connection, heritage, and explanation for certain physical traits that family members believed reflected that ancestry. Michael's father, Joe Jackson, was known for his striking green eyes and features that some family members felt supported the story. Over time, the account became accepted as fact within the family. But DNA evidence operates independently of family traditions. Genetic testing does not confirm stories because they are widely believed. Instead, it reveals biological relationships based on inherited genetic markers. When genetic genealogist Sherman McRae began working with Thomas Jackson III, a distant paternal relative of Michael Jackson, the results suggested a different ancestral history than the one the family had long embraced. Thomas Jackson III and Michael Jackson share a common paternal ancestor through the Jackson family line. Both men trace their lineage back to an ancestor named Nero Jackson, making them distant cousins through their direct paternal heritage. When Thomas submitted his DNA for Y chromosome analysis, researchers gained a unique opportunity to explore the deeper origins of the Jackson family's paternal lineage and compare genetic evidence with generations of family history. When Thomas Jackson III submitted his DNA for Y chromosome testing through Family Tree DNA, the results pointed toward a paternal lineage that had little connection to the family's long-held belief in Native American ancestry. His Y-DNA belonged to a classification known as RFT121435, a subclade of the broader R1b haplogroup, which is strongly associated with Western European ancestry, particularly French lineages. And his Impionata's lineages are Biani, 30 of Nijek in his YDN to Native American ancestry. Yevni Damatastia Native American ancestry. So Mesevenches tu Samabol the YDNA, the Free Pitecaries and Termis's IZ, and according to the researchers involved, the results were neither marginal nor ambiguous. The genetic evidence pointed clearly toward a European paternal origin. Further investigation revealed a significant match. A male descendant of a French family named Richburg appeared in the database, sharing the same terminal genetic marker as Thomas Jackson III. As genealogists began comparing historical records with the DNA evidence, a much deeper story emerged, one tied to slavery, inheritance, and the hidden realities of American history. According to the research, July Jack Gale, the ancestor whom the Jackson family believed had Native American roots, was likely not the son of a Native American man. Instead, the evidence suggested that his biological father was a French slave owner named James Joel Richburg. Researchers traced historical records back to Sumter County, South Carolina, where documents appeared to support the genetic findings. James Joel Richburg died in 1804 and reportedly left July in his will, bequeathing him to his daughter Mary, who had married a man named Josiah Gale. Researchers believe this may explain how July acquired the surname Gale. If accurate, the story reflects one of the harsh realities of slavery in America. A child fathered by an enslaver could inherit neither status nor recognition from his biological father. Instead, he remained legally enslaved and carried a surname assigned through ownership rather than ancestry. His identity, his name, and even the family stories that followed generations later may have been shaped by circumstances rooted in slavery, silence, and survival. Family Tree DNA researchers and members of the genetic genealogy community later discussed these findings, placing the Jackson paternal line within haplogroup RFT121435. The available evidence suggested that the common ancestor shared by the Jackson and Richburg lineages lived prior to 1750. The family's belief in Native American ancestry was likely not an intentional fabrication. Rather, it may have been an oral tradition that developed over generations, as many family histories do, particularly when painful truths become difficult to discuss openly. The trauma of slavery, the stigma surrounding sexual exploitation, and the desire to provide a more dignified explanation for a family's origins have influenced countless family narratives throughout American history. Modern DNA testing is now uncovering some of those hidden stories, sometimes gently, and sometimes with startling clarity. There is no evidence that Michael Jackson himself ever knew about these findings. The research emerged years after his death and was pieced together by distant relatives and genealogists using genetic tools that were not widely available during much of his lifetime. Yet the story remains significant because it adds another layer to the broader picture of Michael Jackson's heritage and family history, subjects that were often discussed publicly but rarely examined with scientific rigor. There is, however, another chapter in the DNA story surrounding Michael Jackson 1 that is considerably less certain and far more controversial. In 2014, a Beverly Hills dental surgeon named Joseph Goodman claimed to have obtained DNA from a dental device that allegedly belonged to Michael Jackson and had been purchased at auction. Goodman announced that a singer named Brandon Howard was a 99.9% genetic match to Jackson, suggesting that Howard was his biological son. The claim generated headlines around the world. However, significant problems emerged almost immediately. The chain of custody surrounding a dental device purchased at auction could not provide the level of scientific reliability expected in a legitimate paternity investigation. No peer-reviewed study supported the claim. No independent institution verified the findings. Furthermore, the testing procedures were never subjected to rigorous scientific scrutiny. Brandon Howard initially participated in the publicity surrounding the announcement, but later distanced himself from the claim. The Jackson estate strongly denied the allegations, and no credible scientific organization ever validated the results. As a result, the story quickly faded from public attention. The Brandon Howard episode highlights an important pattern in the way Michael Jackson's biology has been discussed over the years. Time and again, his genetics became the subject of speculation. Fans believed they saw his features in strangers. Critics questioned whether his children were biologically related to him. Tabloids insisted that his changing appearance reflected personal choice rather than documented medical conditions. Rarely were these claims rooted in credible science. More often, they reflected a desire for a more dramatic story than the available evidence supported. The discussion becomes even more emotionally complex when it turns to Michael Jackson's children. Michael Jackson had 3 children. Prince Michael Jackson was born in 1997. Paris Jackson followed in 1998. Prince Michael Jackson II, later known as Blanket and now as Biggie Jackson, was born in 2002. Debbie Rowe, Jackson's second wife, is the legal and acknowledged mother of the 2 oldest children. Following Michael's death, she spoke publicly about aspects of their conception and her decision to relinquish parental rights. Biggie Jackson was born through a surrogate arrangement. No official DNA test has ever been publicly released confirming or denying Michael Jackson's biological relationship to any of his 3 children. His children have consistently stated that he was their father. Debbie Rowe has discussed the circumstances surrounding the pregnancies. The children themselves have chosen not to pursue public DNA testing. That decision deserves the same respect afforded to anyone facing deeply personal questions about family identity. Their DNA belongs to them. It is not public property, nor is it a story they owe to the world. When viewed as a whole, the scientific evidence surrounding Michael Jackson paints a picture far more complex and far more human than the rumors that followed him throughout his life. The story of his skin is not the story of a man ashamed of his race. It is the story of autoimmune diseases affecting his body, documented by physicians, confirmed by medical records, and ultimately supported by findings noted during his autopsy. The story of his ancestry is not about what his family believed for generations. It is about how modern genetics can uncover hidden chapters of history tracing lineages through Europe, slavery, migration, and centuries of silence. In both cases, the evidence reveals a truth that is more nuanced than the myths that surrounded him. And perhaps that is the most remarkable lesson of all. The deeper science investigates Michael Jackson's life, the more it reveals not a mystery but a human being complex, vulnerable and shaped by forces far beyond his control. Genetic genealogy has quietly and permanently corrected parts of the historical record. Science does not turn Michael Jackson into a saint. Nor does it resolve every controversy surrounding his life or answer every accusation ever made against him. What science does provide is evidence about what was happening inside his body, where his ancestors came from, and what his DNA reveals when examined through modern research. Perhaps the most striking aspect of this biological truth is how much of it Michael Jackson tried to tell the world himself. In 1993, he sat down with Oprah Winfrey and spoke openly about his vitiligo. More than 60 million people watched that interview. Yet many people simply chose not to believe him. He repeatedly described the pain of living with a visible, uncontrollable medical condition that was constantly misunderstood and misrepresented by the media. His dermatologist confirmed the diagnosis. His medical records supported it. And ultimately, his autopsy confirmed it. At every stage, the scientific evidence pointed in the same direction. Yet the narrative that persisted was often very different. A story portraying him as a man deliberately transforming himself out of self-hatred. That narrative was not supported by the medical evidence. The consequences were significant. The speculation affected his reputation, influenced public perception, and often overshadowed the reality of living with a chronic autoimmune condition under the scrutiny of global fame.